Item is consider a request to rezone approximately 14.2 acres from RM24 PD, which is multi-dwelling residential with planned development overlay district, to RMO PD, which is multi-dwelling residential office with planned development overlay district, located at 1800, 1809, and 2021 Crossgate Drive. The rezoning applies only to the proposed Lot 3 of the Alvamar Plan Development.
Good evening. Paul Warner with Paul Warner Architects. Do you want to ask your question, or do you want me to go ahead?
You bet you'll answer it in your presentation.
All right. Well, I hope so. Sandy, excellent presentation. I like to think that shows a whole bunch of work has been done on this project so far. We've been hard at it. The new street we're providing, adding all these other amenities, maintaining the golf course. That there's, maybe that's a city commission decision instead of a planning commission decision. I want to show you a few other things. As we already mentioned, this is the new street. It's actually, as Sandy mentioned, it's where we are starting construction. The members will be able to mix and match. It will be all private. We have extra holes for practice holes. You can see the ponds. One of the major issues with the course right now is the irrigation system is completely shot. So as soon as we can, we are working on increasing the ponds and a whole new pump system to actually irrigate the course by actually trapping the stormwater, which seems like a much better use of all that land than, I know the city's a little upset. It's $250,000 worth of water a year, but for this much land to be paying for city water to irrigate it is not a great plan. But the rest of it over to the professionals. But it does function as 3 nines, and I think it shows that our earlier commitment when we started this, that if you live on a golf course and you had a golf hole behind you, I think you have a golf hole behind you now. This is for all of this to work. This is about the golf course and providing a few other things that help make this function for us to generate the money to put back into the golf course, so we have 400 or 500 golfing members. So, on one hand, a one-time office helps generate money to fix the irrigation system and do all these other things that we're talking about. The long term is really about 500 members wanting to golf on 27 holes and pay that price. So I don't think that's going to be a problem.
I had a question. In our staff meeting yesterday, we asked, it seems like one of the issues is protecting the boundaries of the golf course. And we talked about what could be possible, and there was the idea of a conservation easement, if I remember right, that's what it was called. Have you looked into anything like that?
We discussed it with a couple of the neighbors when there was the concern about what was going to happen with this area of the golf course. When we showed them the routing, I think that kind of went away, because I think the concern is kind of over. So I haven't had anybody bringing that up to me that is something they wanted us to discuss or explore.
Is it something that would be discussed if this item was sent back to the Planning Commission by you and your...
I think that's, I'm not sure I love the line, that's above my pay grade, but that is a huge difference about putting a conservation easement over privately owned property. I've told, the first question I got asked was by a member when all this started was, couldn't a private owner shut this down? And I said, well, they could. I don't know why they buy a golf course to shut it down. This is all geared towards making 27 holes for people who love to play golf. I love to play golf, so I can talk about all that as well. Don't get to do it enough. But.
Okay.
If I can, to Paul,
Paul, you sound like you're saying that if the commission were to grant the approval of that office building, that this owner developer would not be back?
We would not be back for any more square footage.
And how, I mean, are you representing the developer or the owners tonight? Of course you are.
I believe I am.
So to what degree are they willing to go to ensure that that happens? Would they voluntarily enter into an agreement that gets recorded against the property that gives the city the right to preclude that?
I think that would certainly be an option.
Would they agree? Because everything I hear is that real estate market out there is really concerned about what's going to happen, and I get the impression, at least from you, that there's some level of confidence with this suggested plan, but it certainly would go a long way further to ensure that this plan stays intact if there was some sort of conservation easement established over the golf course to ensure that that's how it's used. Or to a minimum that it's, again, stays in open space. And to me, those are instruments that you can voluntarily enter into and have recorded against this property to ensure that that happens.
The conservation easement's a huge step, and certainly I couldn't say that tonight. But certainly filing something on Lot 3 as a covenant that limited it to whatever we're talking about tonight would certainly be, a good legal document to help ensure that this is it. This is the number we get.
So how many more buildings can you put up there if it were to be apartments? Or maybe Scott can answer that question.
I can, we haven't seen the plan that takes into account, the parking to support it, plus the building size.
I mean, it's probably more about, so let's say that's 14 acres right now. It's being developed as half of that, so another 7 acres is available at 24 units. That's another 168 units on that portion that's not being used. Scott's right, we got to park it. But as you can tell on the other lots, once we go underground, I mean, that helps as well. The wellness building is currently only 2 stories with a walkout basement. I put a 3rd floor on that. The other buildings that are in the development plan are actually 4 stories with a level of underground parking. So there's other things to do. I mean, on all of Lot 3 at RM24, there are 320 units available to build. I currently couldn't fit them all on there, to be fair, unless you were to go to a parking deck, which I don't necessarily see us doing. But there is a substantial number of units available.
What you're saying, to be clear, is that if the city commission granted this office building, those other things wouldn't happen?
I'm saying if the city commission were to grant the office, that the office would be capped at 30,000.
Going back to one of the commissioner's questions about the conservation easement, if the commission sends this back with a proviso that conversation about the conservation easement and about some sort of voluntary agreement that gets recorded against the property should be a part of the discussion, are you willing to have that discussion?
I'm willing to have that discussion. Again, the conservation easement's 2 big words. But certainly I think that's a great point, that maybe there are other mechanisms, not just on a site plan or a development plan, that says this is all it can be. There are several properties that all around campus that everybody gets excited when they go up for sale, and then they find out, they go do the research, and that they're limited to be a fraternity or a sorority. They cannot be an apartment building, and something like that deters people from changing it, whether these bodies get to look at that or not. More like a covenant.
You know, I look at that development. They did a marvelous job thinking this all through. It didn't all get developed with the total number of units that were contemplated.
Correct.
But going forward, the people that own properties around that golf course, and specifically on the golf course, you know, they have an, you know, if they have an assurance that that's going to stay there, they continue to invest in those properties, maintaining the value of that neighborhood, and quite frankly, the values that come back to the city.
There is no doubt this is all about, it's about the golf course, and if you live on the golf course, you need a golf course behind you. That's right. I mean, this drawing, again, you know, there's a small little speck in there, and that's that building. But I think this shows that we're smart enough to concentrate whatever we're trying to do in the center of this, which is not near the people's houses.
Okay, well, I think we all wanted to succeed. I think, you know, the loss of the golf course facility and the negative impact that it would have on the properties, you know, in and around Alvamar area would just be terrible for all concerned. But, you know, I think that maybe one of the things, and the city manager brings up important points, is the discussion that he had with the applicant. If there is a way to contractually, you know, to do some kind of contractual arrangement, or at least have it considered by the Planning Commission, maybe that is something that we can do, that we can kind of take into consideration Lot 4, the balance of Lot 3. If this is a, you know, one-time request, I guess we would find that out at that time. If we want to have the Planning Commission have the discussion about a conservation overlay or some way protecting, you know, the property owners and the developer at the same time on what would be allowed, what would not be allowed, you know, as future development that may or may not occur, or at least some restrictions that are you know, brought up somehow. I think that those things ought to be considered, but unless somebody is counting 4 votes up here to overturn the Planning Commission, I think the only alternative we probably have, to be reasonable at this point, is to send it back and have those things considered. We can always consider or reconsider the action of the Planning Commission at a future date, I'm going to guess, especially if they're to reaffirm their position.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the idea of sending it back, because I do like the idea of finding some way to protect the property owners so that it's going to be a golf course.
Yeah.
All that periphery area to where, and I think that, Paul, you guys did do a really good job of keeping that development in the center of the course. But that doesn't mean it can't change in the future, and that's something I think the neighbors are really wanting to make sure is protected.
In a motion that we refer this item back to the Planning Commission with specific direction on top of their reconsideration, is to have them look at some kind of contractual arrangement, as was suggested by the city manager, on the balance of Lot 3 and Lot 4 as it looks at residential office and other rezoning requests other than residential, that we have them discuss with the applicant either some form or some kind of mechanism being considered about, you know, to make sure that the golf course stays a golf course. And I'm not sure, Leslie, don't take this wrong, but I'm not sure conservation, you know, overlay is the way to go. If there's some way that there's got to be some tool.
It's going to be illegal too somehow.
Yeah, that can be put in place that guarantees that remains a golf course and a viable golf course, you know, or whatever that would. Other things that I'm forgetting. Oh, the area to the south and east, you know, on future development down in that area. Consideration given to that at this time, even though that's not part of this application. If there's a way to condition, you know, future uses there, that would be fine also.